Well, good evening. This is the Mike Siver Show, and I'm Mike Siver. And today we're going to talk about responsibility. And I've written two books. One says, what role did I play? And that includes what role did I play in my situation? If I'm happily married, what role did I play in that? If I'm not happily married, what role did I play in that one as well? One of the books is, why did I do that? And not many times do we ask ourselves, what role did I play? Because that's something we don't think about. But I know a lot of times I've said it, and I know I've talked to people who have said it, and we ask ourselves, why did I do that? And this book, book number 2, is a comprehensive look at why we behave the way we do and who is responsible for it. Now, if we go back and start when we have children or when we were children, every day is a learning curve. Every day we learn something new. And it's up to our parents that guide us in our growing education, in our life skills, in our responsibility, in our integrity, in our ethics, and our morals. And that comes from our parents, because we're born, as I write in one of the books, like a sponge. We're void of any kind of feelings except pain or hunger, which generates pain. And we make noise to get fed, or we make noise if we're uncomfortable as little babies. And that's the only emotion or feeling. We sometimes show a little happiness or comfort with a smile. But in the beginning, we're taught, don't do this, don't do that, don't throw your food on the floor, don't touch that, it's hot. And we don't know. Normally when parents tell you that, don't touch that, it's hot, you have no idea what hot is. It's just another word. It has no meaning because you've never experienced hot. Most people will touch it. Most young kids will touch it, I being one of them. And I've got a burnt finger still to this day to prove it. A lot of parents will educate their children too hot. Something warm, they'll let them touch it and have them experience it without hurting the child. That this is hot and this is warm and that's cold. That takes a lot of time to do, but a lot of parents are doing that today to have their children learn without being hurt. Responsibility is tough because none of us want to be held responsible when it's going to get us in trouble. As I write in one of the books about a parent whose child wasn't doing well in school and maybe had a few behavior issues, the parents say right away, well, that's not our responsibility. He's old enough or she's old enough. They should know better. If they're not studying, that's their responsibility. They should understand that education is important. So they don't accept a lot of responsibility for that. But if the same other parent comes to them and says, your child is great, your child is smart and does well in school and is behaved, they then accept responsibility for that. Oh yeah, we taught them well, we taught them this, we taught them that. Yeah, we're responsible for that. So even though we don't mean to at times, we don't want to accept responsibility when it's going to get us in trouble. Now that's pretty standard amongst everybody, including me. But at some point you have to own up to it. Now in the court systems, I deal with a lot of court-appointed people and people that are going through the court systems. Most of them don't accept responsibility. They make the people, or they make the state, prove that they've done something wrong and hold them accountable. And that's what it all gets down to. You're accountable for your actions. When I'm working with young children and families, I work really hard to help the parents understand to remove the word punishment. Now we talk about that a lot on this show. remove the word punishment from the vocabulary. Now, there's times when punishment's going to be around, but as a general conversation, you're going to get punished for this or you're going to get punished for that. I think we should work on making that word consequences, because consequences are a result of an action. When you, as an adult, go to work at the end of the week or 2 weeks or whenever it happens, you get a paycheck. That's a result of your actions, and your actions are going to work, so you get positive consequences. If you leave that job for whatever reason and you stop getting paid, well, that's a result of consequences as well, because now you're not getting paid. Parents really understand when they start to see their children grasping that it's a lot more effective to say the consequences for your actions are, and it can be positive. You could surprise them with a night at a restaurant or a theme park or a movie that they weren't expecting, because they've had positive consequences all week. They've done well. And it doesn't mean you have to reward them for everything they do good, because then that becomes a behavior as well, and now they're going to expect it. I'm not going to do anything unless I get rewarded for it. Well, that doesn't work that way in real life. You have to work for your reward, not just not do anything wrong. So there's a lot of teaching and a lot of learning that goes into what we do. But I also work with parents in the early stages of their children, and we're going to try and go today from children all the way up through adults. And if we have to carry it on to the next show, we'll do that. But children need to learn early that they earn things and they lose things. And as my last guest last week, Carrie and I were talking, when you tell a child to go in and clean their room, and that's a routine they're supposed to do, and they do it, then there's going to be positive consequences. If they don't, then there's negative consequences. But they're consequences, they're not punishments. And once that's understood, adults tend to have an easier time in life knowing that, well, if I do it this way, I might get negative consequences. If I do it that way, I might get positive consequences. But it's a conscious thought rather than an unconscious or an accidental thought. So when children learn that they earn, so if they do, say you, and I suggest that sometimes you put a list of chores, not overwhelm them, but start with smaller chores that they have to do that they are being held responsible for. And if they don't do it, then they're also held accountable and they lose a positive consequence, whatever that might be. But they need to clearly understand they've lost it. And it won't take long before they will understand, and they may even come to you and say, well, you know, I had a bad week, Mom, and I know I've lost the right to go to the movie tonight, or I've lost the privilege that I was going to do, or I have to go to bed early tonight because I've lost that right. And they don't accept they're being punished anymore. It doesn't become a frightening situation. Now, if they want to earn more, they can come to the parent in the early days and say, if you want to earn more, or I would like to earn some more privileges, what can I do to earn more? It's like a group I have that I run over a period of it's a year-long group. And during that group, you graduate. It's a court-ordered group. You graduate on a point system. So basically, you're responsible. If you turn up on time, you get so many points. If you participate, actively participate, you get so many points. If you sit there like a lump on a log, you may get very few points. If you pay on time, you get so many points. Every week you're given homework. If you do the homework, you get so many points. And at the end of the week, you earn so many points. Now those points are tallied up over the months, and at the end of the year, if they have so many points, they graduate. If they don't, they have to keep going until they earn the points. That's being responsible to the court system. That's clearly understood when we start the program. They know what they're in for. But also during that program, I give them an opportunity to earn more points to graduate early. And that comes into if they want to lead a group that week, and that usually starts about week 10 or 12, they start to feel comfortable with, okay, I want to lead this group. Well, they earn substantial points for leading a group. And I work very hard on sharing that group around so that not one person's always running the group. The best way I've found to have people understand what they're trying to learn is to teach it. If you can teach it, then you look back and say, oh, I shouldn't have said that, but I should have said this, and I could have worded that differently. Again, it's all back to self-responsibility, holding yourself accountable. And some of these charges these people have are very serious. So they need to learn, and we have to teach properly so that they understand what they're going through. But as raising children, the sooner you can get that, there's things to do, there's responsibility at home, and there's certain responsibilities towards each other, towards parents, that they start to learn accountability. And if that's taught, and it's not an easy job, and I'm not going to sit here for 1 minute and say it is, that you then have an easier time when you start to go through high school and hopefully on to college or to a trade school, because as we know today, the tradespeople are I want to call a dying breed, but to become a really good electrician or a really good plumber, there's a shortage of those nationwide. And there's got to be some motivation, and that's a whole different topic, on getting young people with mechanical aptitudes into the trades, which makes them professional licensed people. That gives them some accountability for their ability to become parents and raise children in the future. But when you start raising your children, you hold them accountable. And one thing I have mentioned on the show several times is that surveys have shown that children learn almost everything they need to know to interact as an adult with an adult by the time they're 9 or 10 years old. Now they go on to get more education, they get smarter in math and sciences and the stuff they need to earn a living with in the future, but how to interact, how dad treats mom, how mom treats dad, how dad treats the neighbors, his bosses or his workers if he's the boss, how mom treats the supermarket people, how adults interact with adults. Children see that for over 10 years. They're watching all the time. And if we think for a minute that children don't see us behave, they see everything. They don't miss hardly anything. That includes the language, the physical violence if there is any, the physical respect. Dad brings home flowers to mom. Mom makes a special dessert for dad because he likes it. All kinds of behaviors, positive and negative. Children see and learn them all. And I do an exercise, which I've done it on the show once, we may do it again here in the future, about, as I referred before, children are like sponges. Whatever they absorb as children, if that's not changed within a certain period of time, that's what's going to end up coming back out of the child. It's like a sponge. You stick it in dirty water, and when you squeeze it, only dirty water comes out. You stick it in clean water, only clean water comes out. And that's making it pretty black and white. But at the same time, life can be pretty black and white if we look at it. We tend to cloud the situation and cloud the learning with our behaviors. Well, when I was young, this happened to me, or that happened to me, so that's how I think we should be raised, because I turned out pretty good. I've got a good job. I've got a good home. I have a family. But I also might be a real butthead, and people have told me that. But I think that's part of being the person I am. I might be a good butthead, but I'm a good provider and I work hard. Well, that butthead part is what the kids will pick up. They may pick up your work ethics. If they see you go to work every day and come home on time, they'll know that's what you have to do. If they see you go to work on time and come home late at night drunk, then that becomes a behavior as well. And I'm not going to sit here for a minute and say all children whose dads and moms drink or use drugs or are inappropriate are going to be that way as they become adults, because that's not true. But they have to unlearn the behavior. That is true. And if that's all you know or all you see growing up, why would you be anything else? It's hard to watch the people that are charged with your safety as a child, charged with you growing up, keeping you safe, educating you, stopping you from getting into trouble, that you believe that's what they should be doing. They turn out to be wrong. They turn out to be inappropriate as parents. That's hard for children, young people, to come to terms with. Because when they look and see their friends' parents, and their friends' parents go to work and come home and do everything, not everything, but most of the things that parents should be doing, and then they think, well, how come my parents don't do that? A lot of times when children stay at other friends' homes, as they start to grow up, they stay overnight at their friends' houses. Most of the time, they're very well behaved, they're very respectful, and those parents come back and say, wow, your son or daughter is very well behaved and very respectful, and they don't argue or sass back. And you as parents wonder, are they talking about my kid? Because in my house, he's a holy terror, or she's trouble. It's because they're in a different environment, and it's a comfort zone they're in. You know, we cover a lot of topics on this show, and parents also have to understand, raising their children, that there's a saying that I use a lot, is we teach people how to treat us. If as a parent you allow your child to become disrespectful or inappropriate in any way, shape, or form, and you don't do something or hold them accountable and have consequences for those actions, then that's the way you're teaching your child to teach you. And that's their environment that they're in, that's their comfort zone that they're in their house. Now, they will not behave like that in other people's homes because that's not their comfort zone. I've also used an example on here that when I'm running groups and some of the men are inappropriate with their language, because we're basically a Christian counseling program, that I tell them if we don't stop the language, we're going to move the group to church, into a church to have classes. And that usually gets a lot of questions and giggles. But they know when we go to a church and have a group that they can't cuss or swear or be inappropriate. You learn situational environmental learning. They know they can act one way at home, they can act one way in a bar, they can act one way in football games and other venues. But in a church you have to be appropriate. And they do that consciously. That in itself proves all the people that say I can't control myself, they can control themselves. And it's a matter of showing that to them in reality, that has them start to understand, yeah, I do have decisions to make, and I do make them, although I choose not to a lot of times. If you teach your children they don't have to make choices to be appropriate, and you allow them to be inappropriate, you are responsible for that. And you ask other parents who say, well, your child is really nice, and your child is polite and courteous at home, you'll question your own ability as a parent. How do I get that behavior in my own house? Well, like most behaviors, once you've established it, it's hard to change it back, unlearn it. You can. Sometimes it takes a very drastic action to do that. And an example I give sometimes when I do public speaking is that a parent came to our group once in a parenting group that I was working with and said that her son refused to pick up his clothes. Wherever he took his shoes and socks and pants and shirt off, that's where they stayed. If it was in the hallway or the bathroom or the living room or wherever he took his coat off, it stayed there. And if he didn't want it for days, that's where it stayed until somebody else picked it up. Well, Mom had always done that. And she taught him that it's okay to be a slob because I will pick up after you. I don't want my house to look like a pigsty, so I will clean it up and take care of your stuff. Well, there's a big behavior change going on there, and Mom doesn't even actually realize it until it's too late. Well, this woman decided she'd had enough. She told her son if he didn't pick his stuff up this time, there was going to be some drastic action. And he didn't know what it was, and he didn't believe it was anyway because she said that before and didn't do anything because Mom can't stand a messy house. So he knows if he leaves it long enough, she'll pick it up. Well, this particular day, he went off to school with his shirt and jacket and shoes that he wasn't wearing, all in the house in different places. So she went and got a hammer and nail and nailed everything to the floor. Now, that was a little drastic, but she did it. She nailed shoes to the floor, shirts, underwear, socks, jackets, nailed them to the floor. And she left them. He came home and saw him there. This is what he reported later, and just sort of chuckled to himself. Well, nothing's happened. They're still there, so I'm not in trouble or anything. Until he went to pick one of them up, and he couldn't get it up. Then he got mad. What have you done? Well, you want them shoes, you want your clothes, you want your stuff where you want to leave it, so I decided to make it permanent. This is Mom's comment she told us. And it took him about 3 days to get all of his stuff off the floor without tearing it, because she nailed it to the floor. And he had to really take some time to do it properly without tearing his clothes up. And he never, she said, he never did it again. But that's a drastic step. But how many parents are willing to take that step? I've heard more have done it since we had that group, but no one's come back and said they have. I just heard the story. So we have to start early in their life with responsibility, consequences for actions, positive or negative, and teaching them that there's an environment that they have to live in and keep safe, and that you're going to hold them accountable. Because in the end, you're going to be held accountable if things go wrong, because you will be questioned. As they grow up from 10, 11, 12, and 13, you have to decide as a parent what you want your children to believe in. You want them to respect themselves. And it gets difficult when they get to the age where they know it all, you know nothing because you're old. Life is not the same as it used to be when you were a kid. Things have changed. Environment's growing. Systems are changing. So Mom, you can't hold us to your standard. But the one thing that doesn't change is honesty, integrity, truthfulness, and holding and have morals and ethics about other people. Self-respect. That doesn't change. I don't care how old you are, right is right, wrong is wrong, and we have to get them to understand that. So going out at 13 years old and stay until 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night or later is not appropriate at all for that age group, and as a parent you have to put your foot down. Sometimes that can be a real battle if in the early days you've not held them accountable and said what you mean as a parent and mean what you say. Once you start that at an early age, they'll know if Mom or Dad says, I have to be home at 8 o'clock, then 8 o'clock I'll be home. No excuses. No, well, I couldn't get a ride, or it was too far to walk, or it was raining, because there's a lot of communications today that they didn't have when we were children. You can call on cell phones, landlines, internet, any way you can get a hold of your parents. They can't bring me home. Mom, I know I need to be home. Can you come and pick me up? But you don't wait till the last minute. You do that ahead of time. If you have to be home at 8 o'clock and you live 20 minutes away, At 7:30, you better be starting getting ready to come home. And if you can't, you need to call mom and dad, have them come and pick you up. These are the things that we have to start teaching children at a really, really early age. And I know it's difficult today with both parents, a lot of times both parents needing to work just to survive and pay their bills. And I'm not going to sit here for 1 minute and say it's easy, but if mom and dad are on the same page and work out a routine in the home, that when they both come home at night, they're both tired. They can take turns. One has a nice easy night at home, the other one does the work, the next night the other one does. There has to be a joint effort, a unified front. The children need to see that happening, where mom and dad support each other. Children are great at what they call parent splitting. They go to dad and sweet talk him, and dads are normally famously bad about giving in to their daughters, and moms are famously bad about giving in to their sons. I'm guilty of that myself. But you have to not do that. One of the first things that it took me a long time to learn, and my wife finally trained me, was before I say yes to anything, the first sentence before that is, let's go ask your mom. Once I said that, a lot of times, oh, never mind, they changed their mind. Or if mom said, let's go ask your dad, oh, never mind, we'll do something else. Because they understand now that mom and dad are on the same page, one's not going to give in, so that they can come back a month later and say, Dad, can I go do this? And we say no. Well, mom lets me do it. Now we have a dilemma where mom and dad might have an issue with each other because one said yes and one said no, and they may privately agree to say no, but mom gave in, or dad gave in. And that starts to create tension. Once that happens, the children have got a wedge in there, and they're not doing it maliciously, but that's what children do. They want to get what they want when they want it. That's their goal, and that's nothing wrong with that. They have to learn to be patient, and they have to learn that when they go to work for a large corporation, everybody from their supervisors to the assistant managers to the directors to the presidents all have the same rules. And they can't just break them because they like you. That's not how it works. So if you start early enough in your life as parents, training children to be responsible for their actions, and you hold them responsible, and you are responsible holding them accountable for their actions. Once that starts to happen, it actually becomes easier to do. And you don't have to scream and holler and shout. Sometimes a timeout spot is pretty good. But if you take a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old and you put them in a timeout because they're inappropriate, and you make that timeout 10 minutes or 15 minutes, after 3 or 4 minutes, they've forgotten why they're there. They don't understand anymore. The rule of thumb is 1 minute for every age the child is. And most of them, that's long enough, to be honest with you. Okay, and we're going to wind this show up now. We're going to come back in the next couple weeks and finish this up and carry on about responsibility of parents to their children and then their children to society as they grow older. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again.